If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Central Valley Talk today, and welcome to my show, Ray John's American Patriot. Now, as we do every week, we feature a special patriot. Today, it's Nathaniel Greene. Nathaniel Greene was actually the most unlikely of heroes. First of all, he was a Quaker, which made him a pacifist. He had asthma really, really bad. He formed a militia there in Rhode Island, and they wouldn't even let him join it after he formed it. So what he did was, much like our hero from last week, he went to see George Washington, and George Washington recognized this young man's talent, and he even assisted with the logistics for Washington crossing the Delaware. He was a brilliant young man, and Washington eventually appointed him as brigadier general, and it was ruled that Washington had said on many occasions, had anything have happened to him, Nathaniel Greene would have led the Continental Congress. So this week we pick, you might look him up, Nathaniel Greene, a true American patriot. Now I'm going to go from courage of an American patriot to cowardice of what happened the other day down in Florida. My dear friend Dave Romero's church is having a special vigil tonight starting at 7 o'clock at the Wellspring Church there in Dinuba. So if you get a chance, you might go by there. It's going to be quite moving. They're doing a lot of things, and they're going to do prayer for several hours, but it starts actually at 7. I think it starts at 6, but the actual prayer for the people in Florida starts at 7. And, I was thinking this week to myself about cowards, and we don't understand cowards. We don't understand people. I'm one way about this, and it's that I think people like this young man who did this awful thing to all these children should be taken out. I really do. I believe totally in capital punishment for people like this. I don't believe in keeping them around and paying all the expense. A good example, although he didn't kill the best president in my lifetime, Ronald Reagan, was Hinckley. Hinckley's been in prison all these years, just released within the past couple of years, and is living in a very wealthy gated community with his mom. And like I've told a lot of people, probably walking over to McDonald's having Big Macs every day. And at the cost to the American people of his incarceration of somewhere around $3 to $4 million. How ridiculous is that? I am so tired of cowardice in this country. I'm so tired of these idiots that go out and hurt and kill our children and, in my opinion, somehow get away with it. It's got to stop, Well, I'm going to go from that note to another great American patriot sitting here beside me.
How you doing, Ray?
How you doing, buddy?
Good.
Wasn't that an awful thing?
That's how the culture has changed since when. It didn't seem that long ago. It used to be we'd take guns to school.
Yeah.
I mean, in the back of your pickup, you had a rack.
Oh, yeah, everybody did.
Yeah.
I remember I never had one, but all my friends had.
And never even dawned on you that you're supposed to use it to shoot your fellow students.
I can remember in high school. That's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to bring up a point. Good point. I can remember in high school one day, this friend of mine got this new rifle, and he was so proud of it. He brought it right into class. It was English class. Nobody thought anything of it.
Right.
And except the teacher said, she made a joke, said, "You didn't come here to shoot anybody, did you?" And everybody laughed because that's the last thing on our minds. We were farm kids, and everybody had a gun. Everybody, when you turned 12 years old, you got a 22.
Right.
That was everybody, And it's changed so much now.
Well, the whole thing has changed, and it's changed. It's not by accident. It's by design.
Absolutely.
And the design is back to the overthrow of the United States of America. And that goes back to the Marxists, Lenin, Marxists, and the Alinskys, and they've been effective. Let's face it. It's
obviously they have. Look at where we're at right now.
The schools are indoctrinated. But with all of that garbage that leads to something like that, and you notice how in order for them to be effective, they got to develop a hate against something. And so it's those people that hate anything that we think
and they
is
perpetuate
America.
that.
Well, look at the guys that kneel. I mean, to me, you kneel there with a flag in public display like that. He ought to be horsewhipped.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That should be the reward for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as long as we go along with that kind of stuff, it's just telling me that this culture is really been tainted to the point, or indoctrinated to the point, to where it's going to be tough to turn this thing around. And that is the idea of that. The idea is a one world control.
Oh, sure it is.
And it's not to be proud of America, but to hate America. Obama hated America. Hillary Clinton didn't care about America. That isn't what America's.
Oh, they cared about themselves and how much money they were putting in the Hillary Foundation.
And then I do think that Obama, though, does have, which he had a plan. He was part of the puppet.
Well, he was kind of a pawn.
Yeah, a pawn to where he could be effective in making America less than what America used to be, in our time. And then Trump's trying to bring that back. Mm-hmm. And but I want to bring up the FBI. Right, FBI's in.
Yeah, let's
it's
talk
a mess.
about that. Let's talk
I mean,
about
at one time you thought that was a great deal. FBI is absolutely horrible.
I remember when I wanted to be an FBI
agent.
I was
man,
serious. I mean, I was
very
who
serious.
Wouldn't, and I was like out of high school, and I thought I knew I wanted to be a law enforcement officer, and I thought highway patrolman. No, I want to be an FBI agent.
Yeah, well, hell, FBI. They've got the problem with all the corruption and so forth within themselves. Now you hit something like this could have been prevented had the FBI been doing their job.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then we look at what's happening with over a year of Mueller investigating something that had absolutely nothing. They had 13 indictments out of the results of that investigation. They were all Russians. And they're in Russia. It had nothing to do with Trump. None of his people, none of it.
I said earlier in one of my broadcasts, it reminds me of a Shakespeare play. Yeah. Much ado about nothing.
That's what it was. But he had to justify that million some odd. Notice he come out with that right now, and the reason was to try to take the attention away from the FBI and that Florida screw up. Mm-hmm. So that would get the public thinking about that.
Yeah.
But of those Russians, John Kerry, who was Secretary of State, Democrat.
Yeah.
He's the one that allowed those people to come and go. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't find anything with Trump.
Nothing.
And here we are, millions of dollars
like
later.
I said.
And here now that guy spends millions and millions of dollars. Why wasn't he over there at Florida at that school getting that guy?
Yeah.
What's he doing over there chasing Russians around?
Absolutely.
I don't know. It just drives you crazy. But it's coming to it's coming closer and closer where we are going to finally get to the meat of this in the next, I'd say, 2 months.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And you can see little bits and pieces of it, can't you?
Yes, sir.
About to happen. And
but that deal there about those people, all that money, all that spending, and the grief they gave Trump. Well, the idea of the Trump deal, number one with FISA, that is American public. I never even heard of that term before, but now I do. But now I learned about it. Mm-hmm. Man, that is dangerous because is, originally it was supposed to be just for foreign people, and now they have used it.
They turned it around, is what they did.
They used it on American people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
What their hope was to, and the whole idea was to get Trump out of there. Mm-hmm. But not just that. The big idea was let's not get Trump out of being president, but they weren't going to quit there. See, a lot of times you think, well, if FISA get Trump out of there, no, that's not where they were going to quit. They were going to continue and break every member of Trump's family. They were going to break Trump himself.
Oh, yeah, they wanted to see him in jail is what they wanted.
Well, they wanted more than that. That is an example. It's not Trump. What they wanted, that example, and ruin his brand, break his company, which is worth billions of dollars, but break it, And the reason why is they wanted that to be the example that no one ever again will ever try what Trump did again. There was a bigger reason.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
And the reason was so that no one in the history from now on is going to interfere with the way it was going, which was down communism.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And no one will ever try
Well,
again
he stepped in and spoiled their little plans.
Well, of
didn't
course.
He? Big time.
So, but they were going to make an example so severe. His family's broke. It break him, break the family,
You're
put
right.
him
No
in jail.
one would ever want to attempt
Nope,
again.
man, I'll never. If I'm a billionaire, I'm staying on my yacht. I'm not about to go try to straighten out the United States. And that was to be the example. However, think about this now. Trump knows that.
Of course he does.
Can you imagine these guys now begging Trump for mercy?
Oh, gosh. It's too late.
I mean, he knows what you're. I know what you were going to do to me, and now you're asking me for mercy.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen.
I mean, it's pretty simple what that part's going to happen. It's going to say, Ray, man, I'll tell you what, you got a lot of nerve asking me, but I'll give you that much credit. But the answer is no.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, why wouldn't it be?
Of course it would.
What Trump is doing is making another example. He's trumping their example. He's making an example that you become crooked and you become corrupt, and a criminal in our government. I'm going to make an example of you. You're going to go with the sentencing full extent of the law if I have anything to do about it.
And people are going to think
Now
twice
I'm
before
making that's my example.
And people are going to think twice before they go up against him again.
Well, that's what he wants to do. So you wanted to make an example that
Yeah.
you'll never have anybody like me ever challenge the United States government in terms of corruption and crime and crookedness? Well, I'm going to do the same to you now.
Absolutely.
I'm going to make you the example that, by God, crime does not pay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make sure that it's severe enough that no one's ever going to want to be there.
There
again.
you go.
You
There
follow
go.
me?
I love it.
So he trumped their Trump.
He trumped their Trump. I like that. He trumped their. I should get a T-shirt. He trumped their Trump. I like that, Gary.
But that's where we're at with it. And there's thousands of people involved because you got what they're doing. They're getting the small guy first, and it's all heading to the head, which will be Obama and Hillary.
Yeah.
And then they're going to be made examples. And
That I can't wait for.
And the idea is, well, they're being controlled by somebody, and it may be that then those people meaning Hillary, and I can't see Hillary, she's an evil. Well, so was Trump, but I mean,
well, Soros
Obama.
is right in the middle of that mix as well.
So that's maybe where it's headed.
That's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah. And we say Soros and those establishment elite who also are right in the middle of it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, now let's talk about that.
Okay.
And this gets confused a little bit with people. They think that Trump's after Democrats or something. When you get to that level, there is no such thing as Democrat, Republican.
Democrats, Republican, they're all
right.
part of the elite.
That's all the same. Yeah. It's I call it they call it uniparty.
Perfect example. Look at the Bushes.
Exactly. They're in there every
part
bit
of
as
it.
much. They are every bit as much a part of it as Soros, and that's where we have to go to.
Yeah.
Is to go to the head of the snake.
Yeah.
And remember, Trump talks about that snake.
Yeah.
You got to go to the head of the snake. So I feel good about where it's going and the way it's tracking right now. And then they have some people that are just of a different mindset. They're not attorneys, they're not lawyers, and they're not raised in an environment of the bourgeoisie that's back in New York and so forth. Well, you can't get any more down to earth like the average guy is Devin Nunes.
Yeah.
And he's not giving up, he's just
I just love this guy.
Yeah, and so you got a guy like him because there's nothing lawyer about him. He's not a lawyer.
No.
Hell, he milked cows for a living.
Absolutely.
So anyway,
He's a farmer.
He's got one of us who's in a position of power right now, and he's one of us, and he's also thinks like we do in terms of values.
Yes.
And thank God they got him. They got him pretty mad, because they really try to ruin him.
Oh yeah, they went after him just like they went after Trump.
Oh my God!
He
had 8 months of misery, and boy, he hasn't forgot that. And he's not going to forget it. He's going after who's responsible.
Yeah.
And so that's a plus.
Yeah, I think it is.
So anyway, I feel pretty lucky that we have a guy like and Devin, and also this, I guess, this Horowitz and this Grassley and we got some good people in there that are going after this thing in a big way. And I mean, it's it goes so
Almost
deep.
Plays like a movie, doesn't it?
Well, I tell you what, you go to one of you can't make it a novel any better than that.
No, you can't. Gary, we're gonna take a little break here, and ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back and say 2 and 2.
Men who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Okay, I'm back. I'm back with Gary Miguel, and I was told on several occasions that I wear my hat too low, that they can't see my face. So I pushed it up a little bit today, so I hope everybody can see me. I was told again over the past week by 3 or 4 different people that, hey, Ray, you ought to pull up the brim of your hat. So I've got the brim of my hat pulled up. All right, Gary.
Yeah, Ray, I thought I think something that looking at a positive thing, I mean, all this negative out there.
Yeah.
And we touched on it last week, and I think it bears going over it again.
Let's talk about it, yes, absolutely.
And that is, we have to face some facts. Our educational system right now has failed us.
Absolutely it has.
And I know there's good teachers and all this, and,
sure.
and quite frankly, it failed them too. The system has failed it.
Yeah. I've had a great one on this show. In fact, I'd like to have her again one of these days.
I look at the individual teachers, and I've seen them on shows like this and so forth. Great, outstanding people, but they are so burdened by something that isn't fair to them.
And she made that comment when she was here.
She
Great
did?
lady, yeah. You're right.
And I think that, so let's just think about that. We've got the talent there. It's not because lack of teacher talent. It's there. It's lack of leadership that doesn't allow these teachers to be what all they can be.
Exactly what she said.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She went to Washington D.C. To lobby against that. In fact,
because I run across a number of teachers. I got them in my family, and in fact, my ex-wife was a school teacher. And I mean, there's some really dedicated,
absolutely
wonderful people, but they're not allowed to be what all they can be.
Yeah.
Now, how are they going to sit around and teach these students to be how all they can be if they can't even be
do
what
it themselves?
themselves?
So, good point, Gary.
I would like to see that entire whatever it's in. If it's in a building, demolition come in and destroy the education department building back in Washington D.C. and start all over.
Yeah.
And here's where you start. You start where it was to begin with. You start with the local community. You start with your county or your state, or and your school district, and you are a board of trustees, and that's where you manage it.
Yeah.
And now you select the teachers.
In other words, what you're saying, and I hear you loud and clear, is you keep the federal government out of it.
Completely out of there.
Absolutely.
Get them out of, what are they doing there? Other than, I know what they're there, especially now how it has become infiltrated with Marxist, communist doctrine.
Yeah.
And so they're turning around and demanding these good teachers to teach something that they do not believe in themselves, but they have no choice. And so you got to get.
How sad is that?
Well,
Think
it
about
is sad.
That,
And so that results in kids like you've seen there in Florida. There's the root
Makes
of it.
a good point, Gary. Good point. Very good point.
That's the root of it. And that kid should have been taken out long ago, but the teacher's hands are tied.
Yeah.
She can't kick them out and put him in an asylum or something where he belongs.
Yeah. Yeah. She doesn't have that authority.
No, and so the whole thing's a mess, right? But you start on that case. You start at the top. And you get rid of the Department of Education, period, and then just demolish
I
that
agree
whole,
with you.
that whole building.
Absolutely. Get the federal government out of it. Keep it within your community.
Right.
You make the decision.
Right. And
you have a board. They make the decision.
Well, that's why homeschool has become so popular, because
Yes.
people are taking it in, but they're becoming, in the household, their own education system, and they teach their own children. Well, now let's say that, that I'm too busy to do that. Well, so I go. That's what they did. They'd go to somebody and they'd say, "Well, why don't you be the school teacher for us?" And this is when we as Americans, and look at some of the tests those kids had to take. They say, "Well, you don't have a good teacher. Try to pass one of those. Try to pass an 8th grade test back in the 1880s.
Oh, yeah.
An
absolutely.
8th grade test.
Yeah.
Try to pass it. Mm-hmm. I don't care how many degrees you have. You're going to have a hard time."
No, I believe that.
And
I
so,
believe that totally.
So I think this one of the things is to demolish the federal education deal, and start like statewide. Although this state's communist, so you wouldn't want to start there, but start in your communities and go from there. Because I don't think the problem. Well, I know the problem is not the teachers themselves, because you get rid of the bad ones. You can't even do that now. You can't get rid of a bad teacher. You got to get rid of that teachers union. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a communist-inspired thing, if there ever was one.
What a mess.
What a mess, right? And we're talking about children, right? Okay, which leads me to this subject, and look at the design and the reason for this. Okay, I'm going to talk about financial security.
Okay.
All right, and what's available for each and everybody, as long as you're here in the United States, and as long as it remains free right now, no matter how fragile that has been and is getting to be, right? Except for the fact that Trump's come along and maybe changed that, or at least gave us hope that could change. Okay, so if we go back to that, the financial security part, and we think about what we are short of right now, we are really short of manufacturing type labor. We're short of blue collar workers. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do we have an overabundance of which we can't even handle? We have too many college graduates that are sitting out there looking for jobs. Mm-hmm. So we're overweighted in one way or the other.
Yes.
Okay. Now, why do I had a discussion here with you one time on the scam that college education is.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And that's part of the big scam of that department, to keep the professors and all. It's an industry, is what it is. It's a big industry, and it perpetuates itself in the name of education, college education requirement. None of that's true. That's all BS. Yeah. Now, certain things it is true, but then you study in that department, you know. But what we're doing there is cranking out widgets at these colleges right now. They come out of there and they're as unskilled about anything.
Oh, right? I agree with you.
So you need vocational schools, vocational training, because not everyone, number one, even cares to go to college
or is qualified to go. A lot of them, and they don't need.
When I say qualified, but I'm going to say cut out to go.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and I'm also going to say that don't want to go.
Don't want to go.
And that's not their deal.
Yeah.
Now, you take that same person that you say, well, he's not qualified to go to college, put him under a hood on a car, and he'll take a car and make magic out of that engine.
Or a welder, for instance.
Or a welder.
Yeah.
Okay? So here's the difference. Follow me along here. It's because that worker is kind of looked down on if he has to work with his hands, right?
Good grief, that's the truth, Gary.
Isn't that true?
Yes,
let's just forget the PC.
Yeah.
Okay. Now look at the college kid. Well, he feels a little superior, and he deserves this. A little entitled to this. A little entitled to that because I've been to college, right? And this other kid, who's a worker, that's what he's cut out for. But let's see what's really separating that. What's separating that is financial. What if the worker down the road has the same financial opportunity in the amount of financial opportunity as the college kid supposedly has? Wouldn't that equalize everything?
Sure it would.
Okay.
Absolutely it would.
Okay. Why isn't it? Because they don't want it. But let me tell you, there's a way to do it. And if you look at Trump's tax reform plan, the way it's set, and what they have done in the last, say, 60, 70 years with the way our retirements are handled, I think it's a good idea to have a forced retirement. Don't get me wrong on that. You know, I mean, in other words, so much of your money goes to 401k, okay, when you're employed. But you're the one that should learn how to handle it.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
Now let's just go over how simple that would be. Okay, we have certain classes and curriculum that we need to have when we go through certain grades. You study this in the 7th grade, you study this in the 8th grade, you study this as a freshman in high school, and so forth. Why not make learning how to be financially independent as a required, no more than algebra would be or English would be or something like that?
I can't think of anything more necessary.
I don't either.
No.
I can't either. So now what happens is this kid goes to this class, forced, if you want to call it that. I mean, that's required.
Yeah.
Guess what? To learn what he needs to learn is no more difficult. In fact, it's less difficult than about every course I can think of. English, history, physics, algebra, geometry, you name it. This is easier
Sure it is.
to learn, but you're not going to learn it if they don't teach you.
Yeah.
So then you come out of there a dullard in that regard. They could change that by making that a requirement
Oh my gosh, yeah.
so that when kids get out, they can manage their own finances a lot better than what they are doing, ripping them off as it is. What they're doing is ripping out the blue collar.
Of course they are.
Okay, and because there's 24 trillion right now in retirements collectively across the United States. Who's managing that? I mean, you would think with that kind of money, if that was distributed properly, distributed meaning starting with the earner first, then he wouldn't need Social Security, he wouldn't need any of that. So I did an example, okay? And I'm skipping ahead here, but at the same time, it's true. How easy is that to learn? Okay, let's make the assumption, and I think that just about anybody can learn it if they just have the opportunity to.
Yeah.
You know, okay. I have a friend of mine who all he ever did was sell spark plugs over a counter his life, and all she did was drive a school bus. And he sat down because I explained this to him, and I showed him what I do or what I think should be done. I showed him that. I showed him that and her, and they picked it up quick enough, you know. And he looked at me and he said, "My God," he says, "if this is the case, and this guy's retired now, and like I said, all he ever did is sell spark plugs, and all she ever did is ride a school bus." He says, "My retirement right now would be $3 million," and he did the math.
Oh my goodness.
And he said, "I wouldn't need Social Security." I said, "And neither would any other American." I said, "And every American would be wealthy like the Arabs are." Because we got a lot more resources here in this country than they do.
Well, of
Why
course
aren't
we
we wealthy?
Yeah.
We aren't because we are not supposed to be, because by design we're not going to be. I had a guy one time tell me, this is interesting. So you have to spend a little time with it. Okay, now think about this. Okay, let's just say we have an 8-hour day to make 100% of our income. And we got a good income, let's say. Now think about this. You're spending 80% of your day, 100% of your day to make your income, of which you have to pay 20% of that in taxes. Let's say you got that kind of a job.
Okay.
Now if you're spending 8 hours a day to keep 80% instead of 100, because there's 20% that goes to taxes, doesn't it stand to reason that maybe you should be spending 20% of that day to learn to maximize your 20% taxes, right?
Absolutely.
It makes sense in the world, right? Why? I had a guy tell me this. He says, you know, Gary, the reason why people don't get rich. I said, well, yeah, there's a number of reasons. He said, well, the main reason. I said, well, tell me. Okay, the main reason the American people do not get rich is because they're spending all their time making a living. They haven't got time to make any money.
How true is that?
Yeah.
And I've heard that before, but how true is that?
Sure. So now, if you think about then, what is it that they lack? What is it that the American worker lacks that prevents him from getting wealthy? We'll just, whatever. What does he lack? He only lacks one thing, awareness. He just lacks the know-how.
He doesn't know, yeah.
Why does he lack that know-how? Because it's not being taught. In fact, just the opposite. It's being told that, oh, boy, you got to have a financial planner because you're too dumb to do otherwise. Mm-hmm. But you happen to be a guy that knows the circuit board of how to, electrician that knows how to set up a factory. Yeah. But you're too dumb to do this. Well, Ray, it's not that difficult, okay? And it can be taught in school, and I think it should be taught starting in about maybe I'd just say freshman in high school.
Yeah.
It'd be a course, and it would not be a tough course, and because what we are told and why we stay away from that is they propaganda a intimidation. I don't know anything about price-earnings relationships. I don't know anything about balance sheets. Mm-hmm. I don't know anything about... That has nothing to do with it. What if they were told you don't have to do that? There's another way, and that's strictly learning charts and cycles.
Yeah.
And you got a line that goes up and a line that goes down. And now all you have to do is identify when this line turns and this line turns, right? And now you make the decision whether you're going to buy and sell. It's that simple. There's a guy out at the base there in Lemoore I met, and he's a sailor. He's not an officer or anything. Mm-hmm. He's made a fortune in the stock market. But what does he do? Exactly what I said. Think about this. What he does, he says, he goes, let's start from the beginning. He buys 1,000 shares and you buy 1,000 mm-hmm. shares. The market goes up and he sells those 1,000 shares, but you hang on because you're told to hang on, right? Mm-hmm. You're for the long term.
Yeah.
The only guy that's in long term is you.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you Buffett and all those other guys aren't long term.
No.
Okay. So you're a long term. So he goes up here, he's got 1,000 and he sells it. Yours was right with him, and he sells at the high, let's say. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then he waits. He goes down here.
And he buys
2,000 instead mm-hmm. of 1,000. Why? Because he made that money,
yeah.
and now he's ready to go, right?
Yeah.
So this guy, the market's all we're working together. We're welders, right? Well, the market goes up. He sells again. Mm-hmm. Market comes down. You still have your 1,000, mm-hmm. but now he buys 4,000. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And he's done that in his career as a sailor. He's a career sailor out there, but he's made a fortune in the market. And you'd be surprised how fast that grows.
Oh, I can imagine.
So let's just take it a course of 30-year career that you're a welder.
Okay.
Or you're down here working as a mechanic in one of these car dealers or whatever. Mm-hmm. But you've done that with what? That other 20% of the day, or that other 20% of what you have been earning, mm-hmm. but you didn't get to keep. But now you know how to do it. Okay, so let's look at that in the nation. The average taxpayer pays $10,000 a year taxes.
Yeah.
Which means there's a lot of way ahead, but the average person. But if you take just the 10,000, and you were able to have a tax planning vehicle, which Trump has just made that available.
Yeah.
Just now. Like a month ago, mm-hmm. And you had that vehicle, and you took that 10,000, and you just think about the idea of cycles. So you read up on cycles because everything's a cycle,
Sure.
That's why we got fall and we got winter.
Yeah.
Okay, so you follow that cycle, and all you have to do is just follow that, and you become a little savvy about it. And one of the savvy things, you become to the fact that you say, well, wait a minute, I can do this myself. Mm-hmm. So who's getting the money? You are.
You are.
You see how we do that, okay, or how that can be. All that could be taught, mm-hmm. and it's not complicated. And so then I can imagine the classroom. I don't even think you need, normally you take a year of geometry, a year. I don't think you need a year to do this.
I don't either.
I think half a year is all you need.
Yeah.
But it'd be kind of fun. Kids would would practice how they each one are doing, and they time this thing and so forth.
That is ideal, Gary. It really is something
I think
that's very well
I think
needed
it's the
in this
number one
country.
thing that ought to be taught.
Absolutely.
You
I
know?
can't, like I said, I can't think of anything better.
But boy, they don't want you to know.
Of course they don't. Of course
Because
they don't.
if you think about what they're all against Trump, it's not about how he combs his hair and all this kind of stuff. It's all about that 24 trillion.
Oh, of course. Of
And
course.
if you and I learn how to manage our own deal, and you multiply that all over the place, what do you need them for?
You don't.
You know, in fact, you don't right now. So I look at that as something that is, I would make that one of the number one requirements in high school, is that people have a course. I don't want to hear about that course. I could just see it because they do that on purpose, talking about PE ratio, or you got to know about the balance sheets and all that. I don't want to hear that, because that is what you've been feeding everybody.
You just
forever.
wanted basic, goes up, cycles, comes
I want to know how it applies to me. I
Yeah.
care less about that.
Absolutely.
And we have vehicles out there where you could buy, for instance, like the Dow Jones. You don't have to pick stocks. Well, I don't know how to pick a stock. You don't have to pick stocks. You pick the Dow Jones. You pick the Standard & Poor's. These are averages.
Yeah.
Or you get a mutual fund.
Yeah.
And you buy and sell that mutual fund. Mm-hmm. And it's
Same
full,
principle. So,
let them worry about all that.
Yeah.
Who's it? I care. In fact, I don't even know who all the 30 is in the Dow Jones. Do I need to know? No. That's why I don't know, because I don't need to know. Okay, I don't know who all the 2,000 or the 500 companies in the Standard & Poor's 500, because I don't need to know. All I need to know is the Standard & Poor's goes up and down.
You remind me of an example I read the other day in a book when it said people they inquire too much. I mean, it's like taking an aspirin. All you need to know is that it makes your headache go away. You don't need to know how it works.
It's back to that deal. People have a tendency, well, because they can understand. Boy, I tell you, it's back to what people really. Well, we're all people, but we all do it. But when it gets back to, people are more concerned about stomping on piss ants than they are the elephants.
Good point. Yeah.
So they keep them occupied with this. So if you're one of these elites out there, that establishment that's making, Trump mentioned the friend has made $280 million in 1 year.
Good grief.
Investment banker.
Yeah.
I talked to a guy today, was telling me he's from Seattle, but he has a friend of his, they MBA graduates of Stanford. Mm-hmm. They get these jobs, but boy, you can't get them. It's a club.
Yeah.
And this gal made $20 million in 5 years, and she says, my goal is to make $20 million, and then I'm going to quit. She did it in 5 years.
Good grief.
Now, you can't tell me that she's $20 million smarter than the guy out here that's making $50,000 a year.
No.
Of course not. So it's not that these people are. You don't have to be twice as smart, and smart has nothing to do with it.
No, it doesn't.
It has to do with awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know what I don't know. I could have an IQ of 175, and it's the first time I ever seen a car. I'm not going to know how to drive it,
No.
but that 14-year-old does.
Exactly, Gary. Good example.
It's all just amount of awareness. So how do we do this? How do we change this? Because they've been keeping that awareness away from the average person, and you put it in our school system and teach everybody how to do that.
It's so simple, and it's so necessary, and especially at these
okay,
times.
now let's think about that. Okay, so we're sitting here, and let's say there's two people. One of them's a college graduate, and they were buddies all through growing up, and they're sitting together. One of them was a plumber, pipe fitter or something. Mm-hmm. He's a blue collar. Mm-hmm. And the college guy, he went on to a college type career, of some kind. Okay, and they're sitting there, and they're comparing bank accounts. Mm-hmm. What if the blue collar's bank account was every bit as big as the college guy's bank? Now, would there be any reason for discriminating?
No.
And so the incentive would be, I don't want to be what he does. I want to be what I'm doing. I enjoy working with my hands. Mm-hmm. He enjoys working with a pen and a paper. Mm-hmm. So if he gets to do what he enjoys, and I get to do what I enjoy, and we both end up equally successful, then there's no reason for him to look down on me, is there? So you do away, what I'm getting at is you do away with the stigma of the blue collar because you're equal
Yeah.
financially. Now, how do we get the blue collar to be equally financial with the white collar? We teach the blue collar in school, which the white collar also learns.
Yeah.
But anyway, we teach it in school so that now when we come into the real world, 20 years down the road, we've both been working hard. I've been plumbing and you've been, whatever you're doing, pushing pencils or paper. So then I sit there and I said, Ray, I said, man, I'm thinking about buying a house over the coast. You said, yeah, me too. And then you're thinking, well, how does he afford that?
Yeah, he's a blue-collar guy. Yeah.
How the hell does he afford a house like that? Well, because he's got just as much money as you do.
Yeah.
And now, was the money there? Yeah, the money's there. It's just who handled the money, me or you.
Awareness.
Yeah.
I love it, Gary.
And you learn that in school. And it's taught in school. And it's a required course.
This could change this. That would change this whole country.
Can you imagine
It would
how
change this whole country.
when you're driving down the freeway or something and you see these trucks, with electronic, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
You see all these people in there. You go to the coffee shop in the morning and you see all these people going to work 5 o'clock in the morning. They're digging. They're working in trenches, or they're working for cow, or they're working at all that.
I was having breakfast the other day where there was a ton of them in there.
A ton of them, right? You look at the police force. Look at all those guys that go to work every day.
Sure.
What if they knew how to manage their, I call tax dollars, manage their money to the point to where now they have every bit as much in their bank account as that professor that's going out there to Fresno State teach this morning. So they're both in the coffee shop.
Yeah.
But one guy is getting in his truck, with the ladders racks on it. The other guy gets in his BMW and goes out to teach. But what if they were making the same in terms of their retirement? In fact, if I didn't teach the professor and I only taught the guy getting in that truck with the racks,
He'd be making more.
he'd have a lot more.
I love it.
And so I look at that and I say, that's one thing if you make people more equal, then you don't have some of the problems we have. You don't have the envy.
Yeah, and that what does that do? That goes back to that cowardly deed that happened down there.
Well, sure.
Obviously this kid had some security problems. He
Right.
didn't feel like he was as good as everybody else. There's something. Maybe he was bullied. Who knows? I haven't read it.
Yeah.
I don't want to read about him. But obviously you're right. That puts everyone on an equal basis. There's no reason to feel inferior.
Yeah, and there's no reason to feel inferior. And, we've talked about that all the way back, To me, the most incredible, cruel things is when these whites sit there and think that these blacks should be treated different. That's racism.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
And that goes for, why should everybody or anybody, okay, well, we got to treat this group of kids different simply because...
There's nothing more racist than that, I can remember when they came out with affirmative action, and I knew right away, my mother did too. I mean, her and I talked about it. And I said, I don't want to be given a position because I'm black. I want to be given a position because I'm just as smart as this kid over here, I don't want to be given it because but boy, people thought, oh boy, they tried to take advantage of that.
Well,
that was one of the worst racist things that they ever came up with. Affirmative reaction.
I thought the same way you did.
Yeah.
I felt the same way about it you did. And looking at it from my perspective, which was no different than what you were looking at.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's think about this now. What is more discriminating than what has been going on with the difference between how a blue collar is perceived as opposed to a college degree?
It's the same thing. It's the same thing we're talking about.
Isn't it
right?
the same?
Absolutely it is.
So how do you make it equal? Well, you make it equal by teaching the blue collar guy that he can have just as much success in terms of wealth as the college guy.
Yeah.
There'd be a lot of people not go to college. Well, why are you going to college? Ask that. 90% of the time you're going to get, so I can get a good paying job.
Mm-hmm. Sure, that's
well. What if you get a blue collar job and you get just as good? I'd much rather run a backhoe
Plus the fact that
I'd much rather
all these years that you're going to spend 4 or 5 years in college, or 5, 6, if you're getting a master's degree, you could be earning money over here.
There you go.
And you brought that point up one time. Yeah.
And like the manufacturers, you're working for a car manufacturing company or something like that, and you got a skill because with how you operate the machinery. That's a learned skill.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's take a college degree guy. He goes walking in there, and he's got a master's degree, and he's standing in front of that machine. Okay, and now the guy that's been working the machine, he got out of high school and went to work and learned the skill of how to operate that machine, right? The machine's there. The two are standing there. Okay, now you say to the college guy, you run the machine. He doesn't know where the on switch is.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? Awareness. The blue-collar guy can run the machine. This guy can't run the machine. I don't care how many college degrees he has until he learns the skill.
Until he learns the skill.
Isn't that what's the difference in that is if you have your what's the most important thing is your own personal finances. So how are you expected to operate your personal finances any different than the guy, college guy, who couldn't operate the machine until he learned the skill? How are you expected to do that until you learn the skill? Well, if you have no one to teach that skill, then you're never going to get it.
That's right.
That college guy can stand in front of that machine for the next 10 years, and unless he learns the skill, he can't work it. So you got to learn the skill. The skill's got to be taught. What's one of the more important skills, the most important skills, or one of the more important skills is for your own personal finances. Can you go up and be rich? There's a book about that. It goes way back, I don't know how many years.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, Think and Grow Rich.
I love that, Napoleon Hill. Yeah. I read that a long time ago. Great book.
Yeah.
Outstanding book.
But let's just kind of play here a little bit. Wouldn't it be so simple if we sit there overnight, put a class in with qualified people to teach the skill of how you can become financially independent, and you don't have to change jobs, you don't have a college degree, you don't have to do anything but just work, which is what you want to do anyway.
Anyway, yeah.
And now does that make sense?
Oh.
I think it's a good way of, now that's equality when you got something like that.
Yes, it is.
And so then it takes away from this envy that we see out there, and greed, and it takes away from this hate that's out there.
How sad it is too, Gary, that when we see it in those so young, and whether prejudice is prejudice, I mean, if you feel bullied or like this child might have felt down in Florida, you feel that you're not as good as somebody else, and you strike out as this child obviously did. That certainly comes from somewhere.
Well, it's just beyond comprehension when you consider, my God, this guy's taking the lives of young people that will never be again.
Oh, that's the sad part. Someone said to me,
what's wrong with his thinking?
Yeah, exactly. And someone said to me, here these parents are sitting at home. It's Valentine's Day, waiting to give these children their Valentines, when they come home, and it just,
it's sad beyond belief.
Oh, definitely
or comprehension, you know. And it's I think part of it is because of so much of what's going on in terms of our, had to be politically correct about this, or had to
I agree with you. Totally, absolutely.
But Ray, I think that people should look into handling their own finances and forget about it's being complicated. Now, you're going to be told it is, because they want you to be told that.
Oh, of course they
but it's not. And you start with the youth, and there is kids starting now, but you start at, let's just say freshman high school, and you learn the value of saving, you learn the value of money compounding, you learn about cycles that are natural cycles that are going to occur.
How good is that going to be for the overall economy of this world?
And you learn how to recognize a cycle and how to read it. I mean, I could teach that classroom, and I'd have to sit there and say, well, listen, you guys have been here for 6 weeks, and there's nothing more you need to know.
Yeah.
You just go out and do it now.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, well, man, I thought I had to know about XYZ company and all of that goes on. Oh, you don't have to know any of that. Here's all you have to know.
Yeah.
Because the market is going to go up and it's going to go down. It's been doing that before Jesus.
Yeah.
Just understand. All you have to do is recognize the cycle.
Yeah.
Well, you recognize when it's snowing outside, you're going to wear a jacket.
Absolutely.
You know.
Not too difficult, huh, Gary?
It's not difficult. It's quite simple. But boy, I'll tell you what, the propaganda, indoctrination of thinking that it's supposed to be, it's incredible. You know, and it's such a disservice to the American people.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
And it's a disservice to the American school teachers who could teach this. There's nobody out there that can teach it.
Hopefully Trump will turn this around, and I'm sure he will, because education. He's spoken several times about, and he more or less said what you did. Our educational system is failing, and it has failed us. It has failed us for years. Look at all the foreign countries that are far ahead of us.
Oh my God! I think we're like 34 or 32 now. We used to be number one.
Yes, we should be number one. Can you
but
imagine?
But we spend number one.
Oh yeah,
we're number one in spending, and I think
Absolutely.
number 32 in rank.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good, and it can be good. It can be good. Like Trump sometimes uses that term, and you think he said, "Oh, that'd be easy." Mm-hmm. I have to say, this would be easy. Mm-hmm. You could. I mean, what's required? It's just required is to get the people who would be teaching this so that they know.
He touched a little bit on education during this. Boy, wasn't that a great speech, by the way? Because I hadn't had a chance to talk to you about that.
Oh, yeah.
His State of the Union speech,
that
one of
was
the
fabulous.
best ones. I loved it. He says things that really make me laugh, like my dad used to say certain words, and because he was talking about those idiots, those gang members, and he says, there's some bad dudes. He said, and I like that. He said that several times. I like the way he says that.
Well, he speaks the language of the people.
Yes, that's it.
And he's not speaking that highbrow language.
No, yeah. Yeah, don't you love it?
Well, and that's why he relates with the people.
My dad, and I love to say this, he'd say, we used to haul hay, in between milkings, and I remember one time we had a big old load of hay, and there was this Four Corners over there. You go over there, and they had those old Coke machines that had ice in them, and your hands would freeze.
Yeah.
And I said, Dad, maybe we ought to go over there, Four Corners over there, and get a soda pop. And he goes, I reckon we should. And I just love the way he said that. I reckon maybe we should.
Well, Trump was raised really with the construction crews, and so it's kind of natural that he's even come right out and said it. He says, I feel much more comfortable with blue collar than I do.
Yeah, he has said that. He has
coat
said
and
that.
tie, He says, I like them. I like them better. He says, I'm just much more comfortable with that.
It's just like and it's what you're raised with, When I talk to somebody in my mobile home business, I feel so much more comfortable talking to a farmer or a rancher, than I do some big high muckety muck that's coming out. He's going to buy mobile homes from me for an investment, and I can converse with him. Yeah. I feel more comfortable with the farmer.
Well, of course, I mean, we're all that way, but what Trump has been able to do is relate to a lot of people that were not being related to earlier.
Yeah.
With all the slick attorneys and all that, and it's kind of interesting. Like I'm getting back to Devin Nunes. When I listen to him speak, there's nothing fancy and
no. Well, like you said, he's down to earth. He's like us. He's one of us. He talks our language.
He doesn't have that I call it lawyerese.
Yeah.
Vocabulary.
Yeah.
You get so tired of these slick politicians.
Of course you do.
Because
That's
every time you're
Ritzy did.
watching them, you got to kind of read. What is he really getting at? What's between the lines? What's he really trying to say? What's he covering up? What's he? He puts you. You get tired of that.
Yeah.
Isn't it nice to hear somebody say what he says is what he meant?
Absolutely. That's why we like Trump so much.
Yeah.
We as usual, ladies and gentlemen, we've run out of time, as we always do when Gary comes on every single time, because he makes things so interesting. So we're going to close out, and Central Valley Talk. We here at Central Valley Talk would like to send out our prayers and our love to those people down in Florida. Okay, that terrible, terrible tragedy. So please remember tonight at 7 o'clock at Wellsprings Church in Dinuba. They're doing a very special prayer starting at 7, and as I understand, it's going to go on for a few hours. And you can, if you go down there, ask for Dave Romero. He's my buddy. and he works with me in my business, and he is, I'm sure he's probably the head of the thing down there. Dave kind of takes charge of just about wherever he goes and just about everything. So maybe talk to him and go in and take a part of this. It's going to be great. And so as we were running out of time, I'm going to say what I say every week. When you see a law enforcement officer, go up, shake his hand. I did that today. Tell them how much we appreciate them, because they don't hear that. And this thing is starting to spread. I'm having people call me and tell me they've done it. Gary's done it. Several people have done it. It makes us feel good. It makes them feel good. And they should know that there's a lot of us out here that really appreciate what they do every day. So until we meet again joyously next Friday at 3 p.m. Heaven's blessings.
To Minnesota, to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston, and New York to L.A., well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free.
valleytalk.com